Shake a man's hand and look him in the eye. Is that so hard to do? Don't blow smoke and don't tell lies. Son, just tell the truth. There's rumors going round all around town. You've been talking shit. I've never been a violent man. I'd rather be drinking beer. But that's the name Granddaddy gave me. And let me make it clear, you're gonna shut your mouth or say it to my face, or I'm gonna use your ass like a broom to sweep this place. Go on and call up your friends. You better bring a few. I come from a different time when the men were all old school.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? It's time for the final countdown. The show starts in 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's rock.
Welcome to Cracker Culture, the podcast for real Floridians. Thank you for watching. The intelligent guy joining me is political analyst Mr. Ford O'Connell, and I'm Smokin Joe. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsor, Farmer Joe's Fresh Market. They are celebrating their first year anniversary with all kinds of deals. Just last week, my wife went over and got boneless, skinless chicken breast for 99 cents a pound. You can't beat that price on meat. So jump on down to Farmer Joe's Fresh Market, located at 1401 Southwest Pine Island Road in beautiful Cape Coral, Florida. Guaranteed the greatest grocery store in all of Lee County. Ford, thanks for the first time I've seen you. I've talked to you, first time I've seen you this year. So it's good to see you back. You enjoy your time off?
I am. Happy New Year, my friend. It's always good to be with you.
Yep. Well, I want to talk about this congressional House election. So we have a new speaker in the House. After 3 days and 15 votes, Kevin McCarthy replaced Nancy Pelosi. Now I'm going to tell you, to me, that was like the Super Bowl of politics. I couldn't stop watching it. I mean, I watched all 3 days.
Well, let me say this. I think it was a messy but successful speaker's election, and I think that the media did not understand that what was taking place was deliberation and negotiation, and that's good for democracy. When it gets messy, that doesn't mean it's chaotic. It means it's democracy as the framers intended, and I think it was good for America to see how the sausage is being made.
Well, you know, and I'll say this, I wasn't for McCarthy. I would love to see Jim Jordan. I'll be totally honest. I'd love to see Jim Jordan. We had Byron Donalds get nominated with, I think the most he ever got was 20 votes, but that's a big for a kind of a young congressman to get, nominated for the speaker position, which gives Byron, a lot of power. We're going to talk about that, but I want to talk about what they've done in the first 24 hours after the Republicans took over the House. I mean, and I'm just going to put this up here. In the first 24 hours, the 118th Congress, Biden's caught with classified documents, Ben Sasse resigns, Crenshaw misses the bid for Homeland Security Committee chair, Schiff, Swalwell, and Ilhan Omar lose security clearances, and first GOP bill rolls back Biden's 87,000 IRS agents. That's an impressive first 24 for me.
Absolutely. Look, they hit the ground running, and I think one thing that's important is nixing the expansion of the IRS. Here's why I say that is Democrats always talk about the rich not paying their fair share. The problem is, if the IRS is turbocharged, it's the working class that's going to get hurt here, because if you're at the lower end of the income bracket, you're 5 times more likely to get audited than those at the top. And if you turbocharge the IRS, what it means is you're going to have 1 million more audits next year for everyone making less than 200,000. Look, I'm all for the rich paying their fair share. I'm all for the tax cheats getting caught, but that's not what's going to happen here.
I agree with you. It's going to be the middle class and lower income families that's going to feel the effect of that. Before we go on, I got this little clip from McCarthy. I'll play this from him speaking.
The Democrats have created a new thing where they're picking and choosing who could be on committee. Never in the history have you had the majority tell the minority who could be on committee, but this new standard, which these Democrats have voted for, if Eric Swalwell cannot get a security clearance in the private sector, there's no reason why he should be given one to be on Intel or Homeland Security. So he will not be serving there.
So you're going to, if you're the Speaker of the House, you're going to remove him from those committees.
Ilhan Omar should not be serving on foreign affairs.
What about any committees for Ilhan Omar?
This is a new level of what the Democrats have gone. You look at Adam Schiff. He should not be serving on Intel when he has openly, knowingly now used a fake dossier, lied to the American public in the process, and doesn't have any ill will, says he wants to continue to do it. So we're going to reshape. I mean, think about what happened to Afghanistan. Why did Afghanistan collapse so fast? Was the Intel Committee under Adam Schiff focused on impeachment and not on the safety of America? Why are people coming across the border that are on a terrorist watch list? What are they doing about it? And their own members on that committee says it's not happening when it's true. We need to have an Intel Committee that looks at what's happening around the world and keeps America safe. It should do exactly what it was created, overseeing of our agencies and others. And so we're going to hold people to a higher standard in the process if they want to be on the Intel Committee and on the training of what to be a part of that.
So to me, that speaks volumes, because he's talking about the church bill, correct?
Well, absolutely right. Like you, I'm more of a Jim Jordan guy, but Kevin McCarthy is the speaker. And essentially what he's saying is, we are sick and tired of the way that we're going to play the Dems games, and we're going to do it for the best of the American people. Let's look at Eric Swalwell, just so people understand. This is somebody who could not only get a security clearance, but here is somebody that has been consorting, openly known with a Chinese spy. I mean, the Democrats have been playing politics when it comes to committees and not putting America first. And what Kevin McCarthy is saying right off the bat is, I'm going to put America and her national security first, and these folks can't serve. And he's absolutely right to do it. The Democrats started this, and the Republicans have finally learned to play the game by the rules that the Democrats set.
Well, like I said, and again, I told you before, I was kind of hoping that McCarthy would have stepped down and seen if it would have proceeded to Jim Jordan. However, that didn't happen, and McCarthy, he got the position. And hear what he just said in that video. That's good talk, and he's seeming to do exactly what he said. He's taking them out.
Well, he's got to understand what his role is. The media is going to come after him. The Democrats are going to come after him. He has to be a wartime consigliere, if you will. And what he also needs to understand is, what scared me is I watched those days of votes, the 15 ballots, is how robotically disciplined the Democrats were. You realize through all that time, every single Democrat showed up in the House, all 212 of them to vote. They all helped the media pilfer Republicans, saying it was chaotic. You've got to understand the enemy you're up against. So when you go out there and you talk tough like McCarthy just did, you better back it up with the receipts.
Well, now you said that the Democrats, they did play lockstep in the vote all the way through. Now, I thought about that. I thought about it real hard. They didn't have no reason not to. Even if they didn't agree with their own party, their vote wasn't going to matter either. And so they got together before that vote started and said, look, we ain't got a chance in hell. So what we're going to do is we're going to play the unity card so that the rest of the country thinks that the world is not unified in the Republican sector and only us Democrats has got our shit together.
Joe, that's exactly right. Okay, so the first battle was over rules, procedure of the House. That's principle. That's something that all conservatives can unite around. But now we got to understand that the game is now going to be how the media and the pictures in the House of Representatives come out, because most people don't follow this. And what Republicans decide behind closed doors going forward with this new leadership, they've got to come out and look unified and cannot have the sort of spats that we saw during the rules fight.
And you know, like I said, I've seen a lot of people, they were complaining about, you know, what it took to get McCarthy elected. However, most people, and they've said that, most people think that y'all go over those bills in Congress like that regularly, and it don't happen. Most people don't even know what they're signing, and I think that this was good for the American people to see that and expect more of it.
I think it's great. I'm for you. I like the cameras in there because that is what democracy was intended to be. And when the American people get to see how the sausage is made, they'll better understand the nuances behind it. Look, I'm all for the cameras in there. I wish that we would see this type of stuff every single day, because that is what democracy is meant to be. It's not meant to be a handful of people going behind closed doors and deciding what is good for all of America. Look, there's 435 members of the House. They made promises back home. They want to make sure that they get to stand up for their constituents. And I think what transpired is great, but we also have to recognize going forward the games that the Democrats and the media are going to play.
Before we move too far along with other topics, I want to talk about Matt Gaetz. Now, if he ain't the original Florida man, stubborn as hell, stand your ground, Matt Gaetz, in my opinion, was probably the most solid of any of the Patriots, especially the most solid of the 20 holdouts.
Well, there's no question that Matt Gaetz stood his ground, but I think when we look at the sort of 2021 holdouts, 14, 15 of them were over procedural rules. And then you had about 5 people, including Matt, who frankly just don't like Kevin McCarthy. I'll be honest. I give Matt an A+ on his principle. I think my issue is that eventually he had to be talked down and actually voting in favor of him. And my question with Matt is, I love standing your ground, but you got to realize at the same time that there is a larger game at play here, and you did a great job on the rules package. Now it's time to move forward.
Well, now on the floor, when the one congressman come after Matt, which is big, the one thing you heard in the gallery, well, it had to be a Democrat yelling, "Oh, violence! They're expressing violence!" And then you can hear in the background, you're like, "Come on, man! As much violence as you see." That what the guy had something to say. He really, I think it was just a heated conversation. I don't think he ever intended to attack Matt.
No, that's Mike Rogers of Alabama, and I absolutely agree with you. But that's my point: is the media and the Democrats are yelling violence, and that's deliberation. We've seen this. I mean, heck, if you go back into history, they're having duels on the White House lawn. I mean, this is how democracy takes place. And unfortunately, the Republicans have to recognize that they're under double scrutiny. That doesn't mean don't fight like heck for the American people, but you also got to realize when the cameras are on.
Yeah, all I can think of is violence. We need to run to our safe spaces. We need our what do they call them, our emotional support animal.
The best was, I don't know if you saw the photo from the gal from the AP, but they've got it like the arm around the guy. I mean, they made it as dramatic as you could ever be. You would have thought it was Frazier Ali, the way that picture was being taken. It was crazy, but that's what the Republicans are up against, you know. And even Byron, the next day, walks out there, I believe, on MSNBC and just starts punching back at Joy Reid. And the whole thing was beautiful once they agreed on what the rules should be. And people need to understand, this is about procedure. It was not about policy. They weren't disagreeing on cutting federal spending. They weren't disagreeing on securing the border. They were disagreeing on how bills can be produced and very procedural things that most people don't follow. But I think it was great that people got to see the inside.
Well, and I'm going to tell you something. It's far beyond me how they justify this, but I watched a clip from MSNBC, And, you know, the reporter on there, if you're a Republican, you were a terrorist, you were anything but an American if you were in the GOP. And I couldn't believe the way he was talking about it, but they all chimed in, and they're talking about how this new house is not the people's house, it's the GOP's house. And, you know, technically it's the GOP's house, but I cannot believe that there ain't far more people that can see what has happened under Biden alone and not feel like, hey, these good people's got something going on over here, and it ain't a bunch more handouts and a bunch more violence. And so it bothers me when I hear those things.
Well, that's the problem with the Dem-controlled media. Their whole goal is to stop telling the truth and start making the GOP look bad. And unfortunately, that's why a lot of this doesn't get out. That's why they're calling the GOP House terrorists. That's why they're calling them a whole bunch of names, because they don't want the American people to know the truth. And that is that when it comes to the United States House of Representatives, there's a new sheriff in town. And this is a sheriff that's trying to fight for the American people, because if the American people do better, then Republicans will win the Senate and the White House in 2024.
Well, now Florida Florida's shaking their saber pretty loud these days with Matt. And then we skip on down here to Southwest Florida and you got Byron. Now, I'll be perfectly honest. I've supported Byron in the beginning. I was a little let down by Byron when he was elected, and I'll tell you why. He made a comment to a couple people that he wasn't going to stick his neck out that far now that he got in. Well, I thought about that when he said that. What does that mean? Well, he wasn't as hard on some things that he campaigned on as I would have liked. But, you know, now he's in a whole new bracket of power. Can we expect to see more initiative from Byron Donalds now that he's in this little bubble he's in?
Yeah, look, he is well positioned to deliver for Southwest Florida and Florida, particularly with his connection to this thing that you hear called the Rules Committee, which really sets up a lot of different mechanisms in terms of pushing bills going forward. Look, he's in a very valuable position, and I think that that's a testament to his skill. Let's see if he delivers. But I also do like the fact that he's willing to go out there also when the business is over on the floor and challenge the CNNs and the MSNBCs in ways that some other Republicans have been shy about. So on this front right now, as we're playing offense, I tip my hat to Byron. And again, only time's going to tell.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, people are already saying that he's gearing up for a run for governor. I think that's a little early, but I would never expect him to get nominated for the Speaker of the House neither. So.
Well, let me say this. I never thought that he was going to be the Speaker of the House. I mean, you got to realize how these votes work and the numbers. I always thought it was going to be Kevin McCarthy. The question is what kind of rules and what kind of promises and what kind of committees we can get. And essentially, that's where the conservative holdouts really shined, because they understood what they wanted. It would have been slightly better had in the beginning they articulated it better, because that way everyone would have known where they were headed. I knew where they were headed, but I'm just saying what they got is what we needed in terms of going forward, because it isn't going to matter who the speaker is if we don't agree on what the rules of the game are going to be.
Yeah. Now, also, when we're talking about the power that they have, and with Byron and all these people from Florida getting this power, all the emphasis now is placed again on we got the world's governor now. Everybody wants Ron DeSantis. You know, they're really, you know, you look at Matt Gaetz and there's people that love him, there's people that think he's an idiot. You know, there ain't no middle ground with Matt. You either love him or you hate him. And then you got Byron Donalds. And with Byron, he's got I want to call it like a fan base. I guess that's what he's got, a fan base, which has, no matter what Byron says or does, it will not be wrong. And I have seen a few conservatives have said things to other conservatives. Wait a minute, now, you can't put him up on a pedestal. He's still an elected representative to serve our needs. That being said, there's a lot of people that put certain politicians up, and a greater than thou atmosphere. How do we stop that influence on like Byron and Matt and get those people focused on doing the right thing for the people and not for the power?
Well, and look, it's always going to be about their record. Do they deliver or do they not? Do they say what they're going to do or do they not? You got to get between the words and actually look at the substance. And unfortunately, the problem in politics is most people tune in and out. They don't pay attention in the way that you do, Joe. And that's a problem on, honestly, both sides of the aisle. So, look, when Byron comes up, in the next primary, next election, if he does what he says, then he deserves to return to Congress or whatever office he may be seeking. But you got to your point, not be caught up, in the fandom. But I think there's a bigger thing here, Joe, and that is this is the heyday of Florida. I'm going to be honest with you. In the history of Florida, Florida right now is the epicenter of the Republican Party. And in conservative circles, whether it's Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago, Ron DeSantis as America's governor, Byron Donalds in Southwest Florida, Matt Gaetz in the Panhandle, the list goes on and on. We are the beacon of freedom in conservative circles right now, and the country only goes as far as the Florida delegation.
And here's something else. Call it my ignorance to the system or whatever. When Matt Gaetz nominated Donald Trump, somebody asked me, well, Donald Trump's not a member of Congress. And it's never happened before. The Speaker has always been a member of Congress. It's never been anything different. But that's not the rule. Anybody can be Speaker.
Well, that's exactly right, Joe. You could be Speaker. I could be Speaker. It doesn't matter if you sit in Congress. It's about who the majority party picks and whether or not they get the requisite number of votes. So that's exactly right. Donald Trump could have been Speaker had enough Republicans voted for him or somebody else as well. It did not necessarily have to be a congressman or woman, but the reason, generally speaking, why it has been throughout the history of this country, because it's about having skin in the game. On one hand, you can see why you might want somebody who's not in Congress, because then they are not always worried about their political livelihood. But on the other hand, you might get somebody who doesn't have skin in the game as well.
Well, and the reason I brought that up is about after the 12th and 13th vote, I got a message and people were trying to nominate a local guy here, a local grocery guy here, Al Oaks, and I thought it was hilarious. He's a great guy, and I think he'd do a wonderful job. He's not known, I mean, he's well known, but not nationally enough so far to, couldn't speak. But I thought that was hilarious. I mean, people was trying to get people to call other congressmen and just nominate Al Oaks. No, I mean, I would have just liked to heard his name called out. I would have made my day if one of them just called his name out.
I gotta admit, you're absolutely right. But I think that's the larger point, is that there's rules that don't often get explained. Believe it or not, in 2016 or 2018, when they put Pelosi up, I believe Joe Biden got a vote. I mean, this happens, but when someone else gets a vote within the party, what they're basically saying is, we're not agreeing on the rules yet, or you don't have the coalition there that we're looking for. I mean, I said from start to finish, and like you, I'm a Jim Jordan guy. I said McCarthy's going to be Speaker. The only question is when. I think what also worried me here was when the media goes, it's 15 ballots. That's democracy. And the craziest part is the longest Speaker's race actually took 2 months. It was like 130 some odd ballots. It was in the 1850s. So we have to keep that in perspective. The reason why Speaker's races have been so short in the past is in the past 100 years, only 17 of those 100 years if we had split leadership in Congress, meaning one party controlling the House and one party controlling the Senate. They don't want to have these battles when one party controls both houses of Congress. That was the key difference.
Right. And again, as like I said, with that vote, the Democrats had nothing to lose. Their vote, realistically, and I hate to say it, they could not affect the change of the speakership. They knew it, so there was no reason for them to alter from the status quo and just stay on board. And that they emphasized that point that we've all voted the same way every time. They kept pushing that. And again, it's just to drive the point that they're trying to drive the narrative that we can't get along with each other. And look,
That's exactly right. Yep.
But
The
we can't do
Democrats are
that.
trying to say we're unified, and the Republicans eat their own, and therefore they're terrorists and crazy. Therefore, put us back into power.
But no, look, I've said this: we are not unified, but neither is the Democratic Party. They can claim they are. They are as far divided as we are. And I've said this before: it has got bad enough with the rhinos and the establishment and the cabal, or whatever you want to call it. But it's got bad enough now that the Democrats don't need to mess with the Republicans. We're doing it ourselves. And so, I used to, when I first started this, I followed all the dirty Democrats and things like that. I haven't reported on a Democrat in months.
Yeah.
That says a lot, man.
It
Not
does.
that they're right. It's that they're trying to push a narrative. They're pushing this narrative. Same way with like the Lincoln Project type deal, where they realistically done to Donald Trump everything he said they done. And then they put a video out, a movie to tell that they did, and they're still operating.
Well, that's exactly that's what I'm trying to tell you. And that's your point. It's about narratives, and the Democrats understand this. It's also helpful for the Democrats that about 95% of the media agrees with the Democrats, but that's what happens. We always talk about this. People lead busy lives. What are they going to see? They're going to only see the picture of Mike Rogers and Matt Gaetz in a headline. They're not going to know that the House Republicans, through deliberation and negotiation, actually struck a better deal for the American people and Main Street. But
well, and again, like I said, with that deal, there were certain assurances, and in the first 24 hours, we've seen a lot of accomplishments by this House. One of them, I think, is the biggest news right now is the Biden docs. And when that docs come out, and this is the thing, I want to talk about the crisis at the border. Biden took his time in Mexico to discuss the discovery of his documents. And I'm going to show a clip right here before we get started on that.
Well, let me get rid of the easy one first. People know I take classified documents and classified information seriously. When my lawyers were clearing out my office at the University of Pennsylvania, they set up an office for me, secure office in the Capitol. The 4 years after being vice president, I was a professor at Penn. They found some documents in a box in a locked cabinet, or at least a closet. And as soon as they did, they realized there were several classified documents in that box. And they did what they should have done. They immediately called the archives, turned them over to the archives, and I was briefed about this discovery and surprised to learn that there were any government records that were taken there to that office. But I don't know what's in the documents. My lawyers have not suggested I ask what documents they were. I've turned over the boxes. They've turned over the boxes to the archives, and we're cooperating fully with the review, and which I hope will be finished soon, and there'll be more detail at that time.
Now, in that document drop, we found out that the Chinese Communist Party donated $54 million to a think tank at UPenn that was called Penn Biden Center for Diplomacy and Engagement. Now, that's, with all this going on, how did we not hear that this Biden crime family was getting this money they're basically funding their agenda with China?
I know. This has been going on, believe it or not. Not just the Bidens are being funded by the Chinese Communist Party. The Chinese Communist Party is giving a lot of money to universities around this country to basically fund Democrats when they're not in power. It would not surprise me now that Hillary took up residence in Columbia. The same thing isn't happening there as well. But to your point, here's a direct link between the Chinese Communist Party and Joe Biden and the University of Pennsylvania, and the media doesn't care. And if it was Donald Trump, who went to the University of Pennsylvania, I might add, it'd be a 4-alarm fire. But this is the double standard. Same with the docs. This is a double standard. either what Donald Trump did was, it's either all legal or none of it's legal. Don't let the Democrats spin you with a different thing, secured, procedure. It's all nonsense, okay? If Joe Biden is not guilty, then Donald Trump's not guilty. And let's not forget, there's also Hillary Clinton who took the documents and she got a slap on the head. So it tells you right now, the whole Mar-a-Lago raid was made up. And why was it made up? It was made up to make sure Donald Trump couldn't run for president in 2024. And essentially, now Joe Biden has been caught doing the same thing, and the media doesn't seem to care.
I think the most damning information surrounding politics right now or ever has been this Hunter Biden laptop and the involvement of Joe Biden and his brothers and the rest of the Biden crime family. And it blows my mind that, they've got so much bad press about this. The FBI didn't raid Hunter Biden. He didn't raid Joe Biden. The FBI didn't raid Hillary for that matter. But they come upon, and the documents that are found, I don't know if a lot of people know this, they didn't come from a time when Joe Biden was president. Them documents come from a time he was vice president, and he should have never had access to them.
That's exactly right. Let me go into that real quick. He was vice president, just like Hillary Clinton. They're not allowed to remove documents. Presidents are allowed to remove documents, but vice presidents and secretary of states aren't. And not only that, he removed it VP, and then it was found 6 years later. I mean, come on. And these documents, primarily the classified ones based on the news reports, involve Ukraine and Iran. Now, who was doing business in Ukraine, Joe? I believe it was Hunter Biden, as you pointed out. So that's the whole point. You've got everything right there, and the media is acting like an ostrich with its head in the sand.
Have you ever seen the nuclear weapons in Iran?
Well, that's the other thing. That's where you're right. You see where I'm going?
Yeah. Well, and again, and I thought it was kind of ironic that a couple things. One, that Biden addressed the document dump while he was in Mexico. I thought that was a little, I think I would have waited to be on home turf before I went there, but whatever. But I have friends from Mexico. They showed me the town 2 days before Biden come to town. The day before Biden come to town, it looked like the prettiest, cleanest. I mean, you look like you was in the Garden City. And then, but before that, you could see all the trash and stuff. And they also, and I want to talk to you about this, they arrested Ovidio Guzman. Now, for people that don't know who Ovidio is, that's El Chapo's son. And this has created a war in Culiacan, Mexico. And, all this is going along at the same time. Biden's going to Mexico. And the first thing I thought, well, if I was a president, I'd be afraid to go to Mexico with that going on. But then I thought, we're talking about Biden. He's as corrupt as El Chapo. He don't give a damn.
Well, look, you're absolutely right. This entire Biden first to the border and then to Mexico was a sanitized dog and pony show. They wanted the American media and the American people for the 3 minutes they were going to watch to see how clean and orderly El Paso was and then how clean Mexico was, and that they got a cartel member so that the Republicans can stop talking about illegal immigration and the cartels. And unfortunately, the entire time Biden's been in Mexico, he hasn't publicly asked once President Obrador of Mexico about the cartels or about illegal immigration. And the reason is that the Mexican government's in bed with the cartels as well, and they don't want to stop any of this process from harming America.
Well, and they made a big deal of how they went and hunted down Ovidio Guzman and captured him. Ovidio Guzman wasn't hiding. They arrested him once before, and they got the whole place tore up, and they decided to let him out. The Mexican government is outmanned and outfinanced by the cartel, and they can't do nothing. And we are not going to do nothing with Biden as president, and we're going to send our money to Ukraine and help people with tendencies to support Adolf Hitler-like views. But we're not going to protect our own border, and it's bad.
Joe, you're absolutely right. The southern border is a clear and present danger to America, not just from the illegal immigration problem, the national security problem, but also the cartels. And if we're going to be sending our military anywhere, it should be to help assist the Mexicans in stopping the cartels. But Joe Biden's not going to do that. That would be a good use of America's money, and that would help America's kids to get off fentanyl and everything else. But unfortunately, that's not what we're going to do. We're going to gallivant around the world and not take care of our own backyard. And that's truly unfortunate. And main streets across America and all 50 states are suffering because of this.
Well, now they're calling for Alejandro Mayorkas to be impeached. Now, what does that do for us if they impeach Mayorkas? Does that really help us, or is that all like, because the average people hear impeachment here lately with Donald Trump, we hear impeachment all the time, but it just seems to be a lot of paperwork and a lot of talk. We never see a big outcome from it. What will it mean to the U.S. citizens if they impeach Mayorkas?
Great question, Joe. Let me start with the first part. Nearly 87% of Americans, according to polling, have no idea how bad the southern border crisis is, particularly from an illegal immigration perspective, not to mention the fentanyl and the national security problem. If you impeach Alejandro Mayorkas, you force the media to cover it. And what you're trying to do when the media covers it is to educate the American people outside of conservative circles about how bad this is and what a dereliction of duty the Biden administration is basically saying. They don't care about border security. All they want to do is accommodate illegal immigration and process them faster. That's what they're trying to do. And the American people need to wake up, and I think this is the best way to do it. Do I think you get Mayorkas fired? They're going to continue along the same policy, but until the American people wake up, we're going to have the same problem. And the reason why they haven't woken up is because there's a near media blackout on the crisis.
Now, I want to move back we're going to talk about some things going on here closer to Florida. Excuse me. The one thing I want to talk to you, some things happening close to Florida, is DeSantis is discussing banning China from buying real estate in the state of Florida, or any business, any real property. I think that is, for many people, they're going to say, well, that's un-American. I think it's un-American to allow them as much farmland as they've already purchased. I cannot see how everybody should implement a program to stop China from purchasing America.
Absolutely, Joe. I tip my hat to Ron DeSantis. I've been screaming about this on Trey Radl's show on Fox News for years. The Chinese Communist Party is the greatest threat to America and all of humanity in the 21st century. And their new way of imperialism isn't about going to war. It's about buying up your land and your resources and eventually controlling you with your own debt. And until Americans wake up and see that that's what's going on, the Chinese Communist Party is going to continue to control the world. They're doing it in Africa. They're doing it in Latin America. They're doing it in Caribbean. Heck, basically foreign investors own 5.7% of Florida farmland. That means that they're about to control our food supply. We cannot let that happen.
Well, I don't know who's going to step up and put a stop to it, but we've already seen they've tore up several food manufacturing plants. Several things is mysteriously caught on fire or had planes crash into them. Everything can't just be coincidental. And you brought up all the things that's going around all over the different countries, and it really is sad. We got the people are standing up against the government in Iran, all over in Brazil. The people are protesting the election of the new president, while down here in Florida, in celebration, we had hospitalized former Brazil president
Bolsonaro.
Yeah, and Bolsonaro, he was, President Biden has not really said much about it, but they're saying that Biden's going to support his condemnation. But now they're there's no extradition asked for, nothing. But his visa is already, from what I understand, is already out. He was on a 30-day visa.
Well, look, I don't know how that's going to plan out, but I will say this. what's going on in South America is going to come to our back door. And what's going on in Brazil is very scary. You got the Chinese Communist Party buying up things. You have socialism spreading everywhere. You have illegal immigration and drug cartels. We have a vested interest in making sure that there's a stable Brazil. And unfortunately, Bolsonaro was doing a very good job of that until he lost the last election. Whether fairly or not, I don't know, because remember, Brazil's the 5th largest country in the world by population, and it was a military dictatorship until 1985. It's a very, very corrupt country that we have to pay attention to. And frankly, Bolsonaro, whether you like him or not, was making great headway. And that's why a lot of other socialist countries were ganging up and siding with his opponent.
Well, they call him far right. That's why everybody, the socialists go against him. They call him a far right ruler government.
No, he's not far right. He was just saying in terms of the policies that he was putting forward for Brazil. And unfortunately, for the socialists, he was upsetting the apple cart and doing too good a job. And that's why they needed to find a way to make him lose.
You know, I think that everybody in politics has got to be a little mental. I mean, it's hard trying to keep up with it. And I get a lot of phone calls. And I told you off there, a couple weeks ago, I was with Governor DeSantis when he was signing the bill down on Fort Myers Beach. At the end of the meeting, I just happened to be by a County Commissioner, Ray Sandelli. Now, I'm not real favorable to Ray, and I'm sure you understand why. Anybody that's that big in bed with the Terry Miller cesspool, I don't really have much respect for it, because I don't like how they get things done. That's not the way I believe in getting things done. I believe in getting things done with truth and transparency, not tactics and people's money. But that being said, when I talked to Ray, I told Ray, I said, I'm getting calls. Now, this is early on. I said, I'm getting calls from residents on Fort Myers Beach that are telling me that the code enforcement are giving them fines for taking demolition out of their home. And I told Ray this, and Ray said I hadn't heard of it. And I said, well, would you look into it? Not thinking he would. He just happened to be the commissioner that was there at the time. And then I get another phone call just about a week ago, and some people in Island Park area and Collier County. Collier County was asking, there was a white expedition riding around just taking pictures of property and driving off. Anybody know what it was? So I got to looking into it. Code enforcement was driving by people's homes. They would see, if they seen debris that had any amount of drywall in it, they snapped a picture and they sent you a fine. And if you'd done any repairs, they wanted you to undo those repairs and apply for a permit. Now, the way that I found out what was going on is they happened to do this to a fire chief. And the fire chief's wife, she called me and told me what was going on. Well, she contacted them. They immediately abated it because, and I think it's because it was the fire chief. But what I'm saying is these local leaders, these county commissioners, they need to step up, find out why FEMA are not only FEMA's denying these people assistance and a lot of elderly people, but now we've got our own code enforcement out here after a horrific disaster where many people lost lives. And the people are trying, they've lost everything, and you're going to take more by levying fines on them? I think it's wrong, and I think if our commissioners, any of our commissioners had a backbone, they would step up and address this problem immediately.
Well, that's exactly their job, though, Joe. It's to make local government work for locals. And when they're not doing that, you have to question them and hold their feet to the fire. And to your point, we've gone through a rough time in Southwest Florida with Hurricane Ian. People, our local leaders need to be out there and looking ahead and not just waiting for phone calls. They need to be active in protecting and assisting our residents. And when you're not doing that, you have to question what it is they're doing. Are they just holding a job title and getting a salary? Or are they actually going to do work for the people?
Well, it is sad because, and I'm going to say this right now, the problem we have in Lee County The local government, they're so worried about arguing about what each other's doing, they're not looking at what the people of Lee County are doing. They're more concerned with what this commissioner didn't do or the commissioner that didn't get on did or something. They're more worried about spreading gossip and bullshit than actually taking the reins in and doing what the people of Southwest Florida need. And if I offended anybody by that, you know who you are.
Well, you're talking about people acting like career politicians rather than acting like public servants, and I think there needs to be a wake-up call. That's the whole point. That's why you have to break the Terry Miller cancerous cartel, because if you don't break it, you're not actually going to get public servants who fight for Lee County and Southwest Florida at large.
Well, Ford, I'm going to tell you this story here, and this is my interesting story of the night. I just learned that blue martinis have come trendy. Have you heard about this?
No.
All right, so blue martinis have become trendy. This story I almost overlooked because I ain't a real drinker. I don't drink much. So there was a story about where you could find the best blue martini. And then when I seen the headline that says proclaimed to be found, and they named a local medical center, this perplexed me. Why would a local medical center be serving blue martinis? So I proceeded to read further into it, and it seemed very popular amongst young men, like from 25 to like 30. Okay. Yes, the popularity of blue martini is on the rise. A growing number of young men are on the quest for the best blue martini. Elderly ladies are being sought as sugar mamas. Young men who are making bank off the elder blue-haired beauties have dubbed them with the moniker of the blue martinis. You know, as a hard drink to swallow, it's the first time I've heard of it. Maybe I'm just out of the mix a little bit, but where was them damn blue martinis when I was in my 30s?
Times are changing, my friend.
And that's over on the other coast. And I'm going to just say this. I think some of our establishments here locally, I know Farmer Joe's, Seed to Table, if you blow martinis when they come in and serve your business at one of these establishments, we'll gladly accept your money. Lord, I do appreciate you joining me every week. It's always enjoyable. I'm glad to see you. I hope we can get together soon. I'd like to set up an event with you where we can have people come out and do a live and people can meet and talk to you. And one thing I want to talk about before I end, Ford has worked with me with several people, especially when Ford was campaigning. We've worked with a couple of children's groups, people that help out the students. Well, most students have went back to school, and what's happening is they're going to start testing for students that have ESE students. You know, and they call it disabilities. I don't like to use the word the children with disabilities. I want to say that the children that learn have a different way of learning. And so there's a group of people that's working real hard, and they're working with the Power to Parent Union. And I'm a little familiar with this group. I wanted to at least let people know that the testing is coming up, and there is help out there for parents because it's confusing. The people at the school don't even know what the hell they're doing. But these ladies have been advocates for children, and they have worked on these things for years. I'm going to put this up right here. And if you have a child with that has special needs or whatever it might be, and you want to contact the the parent empowerment group, I'm going to put their email up right here, and I'll put the meetings that they're going to have. And like I said, the first meeting is coming up on Tuesday, January 17th. And I must encourage you that if you have a child that needs assistance, these people have the knowledge and the ability to help you. Ford, what do you got coming up? Anything good?
I'm talking about this crazy Congress. I'll be honest with you. You know, A lot of media appearances. Everything's always up in the air, but the great thing is that we're still talking about Florida, even on the national scene. And I think that's a true testament to Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump.
I agree. And again, as always, I enjoy our time together. I look forward to seeing you next week. Cracker Culture Podcast. I'm Smokin Joe with my friend Ford O'Connell. We love you, Florida. Love, peace, and gator grease.